Do you know that coral reefs in our planet outlived the dinosaurs? Or the strange occurrence that bird droppings can keep the reef healthy while rats are ominous for reefs? I didn't, till I considered visiting this fascinating ecosystem. What if I tell you that corals find plastic tasty? Hold on to that incredulous expression, as we are in for many more surprises when it comes to this most biologically diverse and best preserved reefs in India. It's almost impossible to be sad at the sight of coral reefs, isn't it? But it makes me sad to even think that such a beautiful place where more than a quarter of the terrestrial fauna and flora are endemic may not be even habitable in the future. Why? Because Andaman is sinking. Yes, the title mentioned in my thumbnail isn't exactly a clickbait. Indeed, inhabitants of these islands need to be relocated eventually, and the implication of that on tribes makes me shudder. Not sure why authorities are dead silent or downplay this fact, but we cannot forever play ostrich here, as the legend goes, trying to bury our head inside sand of the ocean bed and making all okay signs from underwater. But how this is even possible? Well, I'll show you exactly how, but before facing the future, we need to peep into the past and get to know about the origin of coral formation here. Have you ever looked at the mirror and wondered, who is this? Do you feel like a stranger to yourself at times? Right at this very moment, trillions of microorganisms living on and inside your body. Do they have any collective wish far beyond the reach of your conscious mind? No matter how dull and boring our life appears on the outside, I think there's an unimaginably wonderful world deep inside all of us. Not often nurtured, very often not finding the luxury to do so, and hence habitually dismissed. But it's there, an inner world that we keep secret to even ourselves at times, lest it gets disregarded as stupid by the outside world. We can feel it only when we pay keen attention. And as within, so without. Our oceans are always keeping numerous secrets inside. In fact, more than 400 miles below the surface, a huge ocean is trapped inside rocks, hidden in Earth's mantle, the volume of which is 3 times the volume of water on the surface. So this expansive ocean in front of our eyes is just tip of the iceberg, with 70% of the Earth's surface residing below the ocean, of which 95% are still unexplored by humans. It amuses me that we actually know more about the surface of Mars than our ocean bed. For example, for hundreds of years, we had no clue about Milky Sea phenomenon, noticed mostly in the waters of Northwest Indian Ocean and off the coast of Indonesia. This has also been noticed in wee hours in Andaman, where one can see glowing stars in water, huge enough to be seen from space, likely from the bioluminescent bacteria that attract fish in order to be eaten and survive in their gut. If you're happy being surrounded with beautiful marine life and colorful creatures, without much understanding about exactly where you are and what you are being surrounded with. That insouciant fun, nobody can take the childlike wonder away from you. However, if you're not just satisfied with that, you would like to understand the gravitas of the place you are looking at, you would like to know a little bit more about the underwater life in order to completely enjoy the essence of this island, then knowing a bit about all this will definitely going to augment your experience manifold. How else are you going to have a conversation with the diving operators regarding your preferred diving sites, and how else you can maximize your opportunity to meet a specific species? Because the regular diving sites, make no mistake about it, are increasingly turning like a graveyard, which is an extremely worrisome sign, considering that coral reefs are one of the most diverse and valuable ecosystems in the world, and we have managed to damage almost 50% of the reefs. So the situation on the ground is pretty bleak. We only see videos with colorful reef, but that's not the case there. In fact, there's widespread coral bleaching in the oft visited places. Otherwise, at a certain level, in order to enjoy the underwater, you do not even need to know much about what it is. But that approach will be strictly limiting and may disempower you. As you can see, during my submarine ride in regular sites of North Bay, I experienced that the vibrant corals have all turned white due to various stressors. Yes, there was a cyclonic storm going on then, and severe storms could upset corals. But short-term changes are not responsible for this. So if you don't want to watch mostly bleached corals during your trip, then this video will indicate few sites with better reef condition. Even otherwise, I'll make another video to help you with lesser known relatively unaffected sites and special tips for your best possible underwater experience. But isn't it unfortunate that colorful corals underwater in common sites have become a rarity now? When I mentioned in the beginning that corals like the taste of plastics, I actually indicated the fact that plastic in oceans breaks down into microplastic, appearing very similar to fish food. But not just due to this appearance. Corals prefer unfouled microplastics because the combination of chemical additives in them entices their taste preference. How bad is that? Plastics pose a major threat to foraging marine life, leading to their intestinal blockages. And yet they are not totally banned in Andaman. One good thing has happened though. The Port Blair Municipal Council runs pet competition around who can collect the maximum quantity of plastic waste, and also shredded plastics are used in road construction. What we can do as a visitor? We can stop using stray plastic regardless of whether we are traveling anywhere or not. Also, if and when you shop in Andaman, it's best to avoid curios and jewelries from corals because around 4 million pounds of coral skeletons are removed from already fragile marine ecosystem every year, and coral poaching is a reality. In this video, I will not only take you through how coral reefs originated in Andaman, I am also going to reveal the reality of the underwater situation. Chapter timestamps are provided below in the description box if you are in a hurry. Like this marine aquarium, the once untouched islands of Andaman have been a naturally isolated chamber during the 65 million or so years of their existence. Tropical oceans are generally known as the desert sand dunes of the ocean, with general scarcity of life. But there's one magnificent exception: coral reefs. That's why we see this underwater paradise teeming with marine life, extending over 11,000 square kilometers in Andaman, while Reef in Nicobar adorns the sea over 2,500 square kilometers. Today, these islands are no longer remote, with easy access from the mainland India. But only a few decades ago, the pristineness of Andaman was on a different level. That's why Jack Cousteau, the globally renowned ocean explorer and co-inventor of scuba diving, called them the Invisible Islands when he visited in 1989. Corals take roots on the ocean floor like most plants do. But are they plants? Some earlier naturalists thought them as insects, some thought they are plants, and looking at their hardened surface, some dismissed them as rocks. Before unraveling the mystery about the origin of these dazzling wild architects on Earth, let's first see what exactly we are looking at here in Andaman's primeval locations and gorgeous underwaters for a wholesome perspective. Broadly, there are three different theories around. It's ironical that the first postulate is the brainchild of British naturalist Sir Charles Darwin, who never touched India when he was working with navigators to chart the coral reefs encountered in South Pacific and Indian Ocean. during his legendary voyage of the HMS Beagle. We mostly know him for his contributions in the field of evolutionary biology, but he was a keen geologist and a naturalist too. 6 years after this voyage, in 1842, Darwin published his theory about the formation of atolls. He also published a beautiful map compiling all known reefs on the Earth. When compared with today's satellite images, it's unbelievably accurate. He separated them into three different groups. Those attached to the land were called fringing reefs. Those detached from land and separated by a lagoon were called barrier reefs. And then there were ring reefs that enclosed a central lagoon but no land, the atolls. Coral reefs are actually huge colonies of tiny animals that need sunlight to grow. They are marine invertebrates living in compact colonies. So the mounds we are looking at is made up of thousands of tiny animals called polyps. And atolls, as I just mentioned, are ring-shaped coral reefs, islands, or a series of islets. For example, the Maldives consist of a chain of 26 atolls in the Indian Ocean. The atoll surrounds a water body called lagoon. Now, atolls develop with seamounts, which are underwater volcanoes. When such a volcano erupts, the lava gets concentrated on the ocean bed. Now, if the volcano continues to erupt, what will happen? The seamount's elevation will increase, right? Eventually, they will break the water surface and the top of the volcano becomes an oceanic island. Then corals will start building reef around it and they will surround the island just below the ocean surface. A sandbank also will create itself with winds, waves, etc. And it will turn into a breeding ground of birds who will make ground vegetation possible. Hence, eventually it will become suitable for humans. But eventually cooling ocean crust combined with the weight of massive islands will cause the island to sink, as Darwin suggested. So does it mean Cousteau's invisible island will one day truly become invisible? Am I talking about any specific island or all those 572 islands which were once part of the Asian mainland but got separated over 100 million years ago as shown in my last video? Well, if any of us think that only polar bears of the Arctic are affected by rising sea levels and humans are not likely to become climate refugees, we are in for George. These are the 5 Indian islands that are disappearing slowly from our world map as I speak. One of the most remarkable places on Earth with abundance of whales, dolphins, dugong, sea turtles, shellfish, the place that is ecologically and culturally unique due to its remoteness, the place which is home to our last Paleolithic ancestors, will become unlivable. And with disappearance of both Lakshadweep and ANI, Indians' coral island chains will become part of history. Are we going to remain only silent? Take our blissful vacations till it becomes totally doomed? Greek philosopher Plato narrated the story of Atlantis, an utopian civilization with huge naval power and abundance of rare exotic wildlife. The original inhabitants of this city were claimed to be of extraterrestrial origin, who reached there around 50,000 years ago from the Lyrian star system. These people were self-sufficient enough to grow their own food and reared animals. According to the legend mentioned by Plato, this enigmatic Atlantis was built by Poseidon, the god of sea, storms, and earthquakes, on top of a mountain in an isolated island in order to protect Plato, a mortal woman whom Poseidon fell in love with. So he made this island surrounded by rings of water and land. There was also a capital city in the central island. Plato said that this place existed roughly 9,000 years ago of his own time, and since then several poets, writers passed on this mythical story. However, the only known record of Atlantis is found on Plato's writing. He mentioned that Atlanteans, the inhabitants of this island for the lack of a better word, got greedy and corrupt, and hence God decided to put them in their place in Ocean's basin. Plato narrated this legend around 360 BC, and everyone initially laughed upon reading this. At the same time, marine explorers and scientists couldn't completely brush it off either because, as I said, most of the ocean is still unexplored by humans. And so started the endless investigation and speculation about where Atlantis could possibly be, if at all such a place existed. Few reasoned it could be somewhere in Antarctica or somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. Some scientists said it could be somewhere between the Spain and Morocco waters in Cadiz, while many others proposed it could be Crete, Greece's largest island. And then there's a different thought that someday this lost island will rise off the east coast of North America. Wherever this fabled Atlantis was, we may never know for sure. But Andaman reminds me of the same story, of the same possible fate. Plato mentioned that God sent one terrible night of fire and earthquakes that caused Atlantis to sink into the sea, as people over there became greedy, petty, morally bankrupt, and this gradual degradation, to be fair, was one of the unifying themes of most of his philosophical theories. However, I'm not talking about a theoretical possibility. Andaman already witnessed huge ecological disturbances after the 2004 earthquake that caused it to lose almost 97% of its mangrove cover. Scientists believe that irreversible ecological damage will inflict this archipelago, as Center has proposed a massive development project last year. They estimate that around 2050, Andaman will be unrecognizable, and by 2100, this entire archipelago, with all 572 islands, will sink into the sea sooner or later due to the rising sea levels and melting of ice caps owing to global warming. If any of you are wondering whether Maldives will be accessible for future generations, then let me tell you that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has cautioned that even Maldives need to be vacated. The impact of accelerating sea level rise due to warming of oceans will trigger a series of cyclones, and thus will come Plato's one fateful night of fire and earthquakes. Not sure why everybody got so fixated on either dismissing his theories or finding the true spot of Atlantis, where if you look at Plato's philosophical model, he always looked at reality with two different aspects, the ideal and the phenomenon. He might have seen something similar, or he just had that foresight enough to warn us through a story. That could be possible, the phenomena of an once ideal island. While at this point, this appears as a virtual certainty, we just can't sit, read, and talk about this doomsday. We simply can't afford to. This tweet shared by the crypto naturalist, which I am sharing here with explicit permission of the account holder, resonated with me a great deal, and it's befitting this context. It's too easy to think that we have already kind of made irreversible damage and there's no point, and to get into this entire cocoon of hopelessness. But pessimism, while useful in short doses, but beyond a point, it's just a complete waste of time. Hope, on the other hand, demands work, and it cannot be justified by fatalism. One good thing is that here we all know what we ought to do, and not everybody has to get into field. This is something where we can make simple differences just by sitting at our home. Join me in this journey called Andamania, and share this video to raise awareness within your communities. While I have seen plenty of videos on YouTube about the underwater life of Andaman, I haven't seen videos which shows the ground reality there. So it's a very critical topic. Now, coming back to Darwin, he thought that coral atolls would grow as reefs stretched towards sunlight, while islands slowly would sink beneath the sea, as I have demonstrated before. At that time, geologists believed that continents were steadily rising, while oceans were showing the reverse trend. Since both fringing and barrier reefs were often noticed around volcanic islands, he theorized that reefs would initially form on the fringes of the volcanic islands. As mentioned before, coral larvae are made up of tiny organisms called polyps who secrete limestone skeletons. This secreted calcium carbonate allow more polyps to attach themselves over a period, as during their life cycle they reproduce, and while dying, they leave their skeletons behind. As coral reefs begin to grow, other animals and species are also attracted to the diverse habitat and find places to settle. Over 25% of all marine life can be found on coral reefs. Thus, they border the coastline of islands, and this fast stage of coral formation is called fringing. When the volcano dies and sinks back into the ocean, the reef would remain as a separate barrier reef and eventually, after the complete submersion of the volcano, an atoll. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands have fringing reefs and a 320-kilometer long barrier reef on the west coast. In contrast, the Lakshadweep Islands are made up of atolls. Such a wonderful and compelling theoretical model in those days was truly unthinkable. Another reason it still features in university textbooks despite being incorrect. Yes, you heard it right. Marine geologist and oceanographer Andrew Droxler, who studied coral reefs for more than 40 years, called it fatally flawed, which I feel is a little harsh because, in his own words, Darwin had no concept that sea level could go up and down because glaciation didn't become common knowledge until the 1860s. It's actually climate change and changing sea levels, that is the rise and fall with glacial cycles, that create atolls. But he still got it mostly right, and that's why a threshold of atoll formation, named as Darwin Point, exists at the northern end of the Hawaiian archipelago. Beyond this point, atolls drown. But all is not lost yet. By strengthening and restoring existing natural ecosystems like the ones we see in forests, we can reduce carbon dioxide from the atmosphere that contributes to the greenhouse gases leading to global warming. Because forest not only absorbs carbon It protects us from the erosive forces of intense rain and alleviate floods, more so mangrove forest, which acts as a natural barrier against coastal flood and shoreline erosion. No technological quick fix is as effective as nature-based solutions are. But these solutions, which can potentially reduce emissions by 12 gigatons each year, receive less than 3% of the available global climate funding, in spite of being cost effective. What's working for us is that nature is supremely forgiving till we completely take it for granted and meet its kind tolerance with nonchalance. And nature is already on the table for discussion, offering solution by her own. Are you joining?